live. All right. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone can see my screen. Just to introduce myself, my name is Tim Sedlak. I'm a solutions consultant with Stardog based in the Washington, D.C. area. And I'm here today to talk about knowledge graphs, specifically how you can build your own knowledge graph in just 4 clicks. So I'm going to start with some slides, and then we'll move into a live demo. I'll do my best to monitor the Q&A section, but if I don't get to your question, let me know and we'll answer it after. Thank you. So this is just a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. We'll touch on the problems that keep insights kind of deep and entrenched across the enterprise. We'll talk about the challenges around data wrangling and how a knowledge graph can actually take you from columns to concepts. We'll cover a quick example in the life sciences space. And then we'll demonstrate how you can start with knowledge graphs in just 4 clicks. And then we'll wrap up with some Q&A, time permitting. So there's a little quote here on the screen, but the main point is organizations often find it difficult to be data-driven because they struggle with their existing data management systems that are often built on old technology or just their the number of disparate data sources they have across the organization. This causes their insights to remain trapped in these hard to reach data silos. And then we'll talk about today how you can leverage knowledge graphs to break down the barriers between these silos and accelerate analytics, machine learning, and other data science capability. So while it's not uncommon to have organizations with their siloed data already consolidated, it's really far from being unified and understood in the context of a business need. Typically, there's no single common vocabulary that is used to describe data across the enterprise. And this means that it often lacks the necessary context. And as I mentioned before, data wrangling continues to hinder data science productivity with data that is stored both inside the organization and outside the organization. And data scientists often spend over 65% of their time discovering, structuring, cleaning, enriching, and validating their data before they can even start to analyze it. And in many instances, historic knowledge, specialized skills are required to work with the data kind of across the entire ecosystem. And this is another area where that context or meaning that knowledge graphs give the data can help accelerate the work you're doing. So what's the antidote to this challenge? In my mind, it's a flexible, reusable semantic data layer that unifies data and metadata under a common business vocabulary that can deliver context-enriched information and capabilities to infer new connections across the data and uncover insights. So I talked about columns to concepts. What do I mean by this? Well, first, the data silos. Critical data is often physically stored in different places, including third-party sources, spreadsheets, or just in people's minds. It also exists in many structures, whether those are tables, in the code, PDFs. This data exists in a lot of different forms. So to go from columns to concepts, the first step is to ingest or virtualize the data. And with the Stardog Enterprise Knowledge Graph platform, it gives you the ability to unify data from these sources and offering the flexibility between ETL or virtualization, which is a cost-efficient solution to scale. This means by virtualization, you can leave data in your source, and Stardog will go out and query in real time to pull that data into the knowledge graph. The next step is to enrich your data and to enrich the knowledge graph. This means encoding metadata into the knowledge graph that adds real-world context to the data and brings business meaning to those columns. Then you can infer or use Stardog's inference engine to augment the data with new connections. And with full explainability, that means you can see the logic that led to these additions. And then last, you can accelerate your analytics, your machine learning, your BI reporting using the tools and notebooks of your choice. So what can this enable enterprises to do? Well, when you can turn these columns into concepts, then you can harmonize the data through business meaning. You can connect data from all across the enterprise all across the different data silos. And at that point, you can begin to streamline the data exploration and discovery and provide that data to more data citizens who may not have the specialized skills required to wrangle the data. And in reality, this applies to many different industries. Here are just a few different industry verticals and some of the use cases that knowledge graphs can be applied to solve. But today I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into a life sciences use case and talk about why our product is being brought into these organizations. And this has to do with the challenge of disparate data sources and inconsistent formats that's really bogging down innovation. So we're going to use a pharmaceutical use case from one of our customers as an example. Boehringer Ingelheim is a pharmaceutical company with a very complex data ecosystem. The data in their enterprise really spans the gamut from research and development to clinical trials, regulatory data, post-market sales data, and most importantly, safety and quality data. And ultimately, all of this data sits in many different silos, both internal to the organization and external. Now, what can knowledge graphs be used to solve? Well, it can support researchers to understand what drug targets to identify and validate. From a clinical perspective, you can accelerate the execution execute the time to drug discovery. From a commercial standpoint, what is the omni-channel framework and how do you coordinate across various go-to-market functions? Can lead to faster drug approvals. And then from a post-market or post-approval sales, it can help reduce adverse effects by really understanding what compounds are part of specific drugs out on the market and what effects those compounds are having on consumers or us as people. And so it's really important to understand the entire supply chain of that data. If you think about from molecules all the way through the product, a knowledge graph can begin to map this lineage. So with Stardog, you can look at this unified view of the organization without having to move or copy the data. You can leverage it where in place, whether that's in a remote database or some third-party application. You can build a reusable, composable digital representation of the entire life sciences life cycle, from the R&D process through clinical trials, all the way through the post-approval drug surveillance. And by representing these entities at the business layer, regardless of where that data might come from, you're able to promote the reuse of that data. And then by connecting it, you're able to share that data across various business functions. So defining the data in the semantic layer as, so you can define the data as molecular components or compounds. You have studies, you have clinical trials. Those studies are associated to trials. You also have regulatory entities, toxicity levels, adverse effects. All of these concepts are linked in the knowledge graph. And this really levels up the understanding of how your data is connected and tied to the business layer. And so we really see pharmaceutical companies transforming how they do business, and that's represented in the real change in how quickly they can deliver their pharmaceutical products to the market. So I'm coming to the end of the slides, I promise. So a unified semantic layer that is powered by a knowledge graph then empowers those users to answer complex questions that were once time consuming and difficult. You can ask questions from many different perspectives. And this is really powerful when you're beginning to look at gaining insights from your data and your knowledge graph specifically. Now, some of the key capabilities that I think you should look for in a knowledge graph. The first is virtualization. I've talked about this. This is connecting directly to your data sources, whether that's a relational database or a semi-structured database. And also, you can persist your data. And with a knowledge graph and the Stardog platform, you can build this hybrid approach where some of your data is left in remote data sources while you materialize some of that in the graph. But because you're querying from the point of view of the semantic layer, Stardog handles all the complexities to figure out where that data is. And that semantic layer, it treats relationships as first-class citizens. You can infuse meaning into your data versus the structured first relational thinking. You can link and trace concepts to unify data across your silos. And like I said on the last slide, you can ask questions from really any perspective. And all of this leads to flexibility that allows you to continuously absorb new data sources and evolve the graph over time. And the last is inferencing. You can add new nodes, relationships, and context through semantic reasoning. You can use ontology-based axioms, declarative rules, or machine learning algorithms to enrich the data. And in the Stardog's platform, inferences appear at query time, which guarantees that you're always getting the latest and greatest output from those inferences that are deployed. So according to a commissioned study, enterprises using Stardog can realize a return on investment of 320% and total benefits of 9.86 million over 3 years. This is done through virtualization, which reduces the need for expensive ETL processes. It reduces storage costs. You can connect across many different data sources and allows you to realize the value and the insights in your data much faster. So I'm about to step into the demo today. As the title of this presentation is 4 clicks to a knowledge graph. Within the Stardog platform, we have what we call knowledge kits. These are actual Stardog databases that contain data models, data, example queries, things for you to get started in your knowledge graph journey. And before we hop into that, just to kind of cover our 3 UIs, these are the UIs that are going to be leveraged to build a knowledge graph. Stardog Explorer is our graph search and visualization tool. This allows you to search and explore the graph. Stardog Designer is our low-code visual modeling and mapping tool. So this allows you to build data models, onboard data sources, and map tables and project resources from those sources to your model. And then the third is Stardog Studio. This is more for administrators, data engineers, and developers, but it's for more about standing up your knowledge graph and administering, who can access it and things like that. So today we'll see Stardog Explorer and Stardog Designer. I'm going to move into the demonstration. So today we're going to take advantage of one of Stardog's knowledge kits around flight planning. If you're planning a flight, you might want to know what the weather is, what radio frequencies do you need, what runways are in operation. And so I'll move into the demo now. And later today, just to call out, if you want to join us, we have a Stardog meet and greet at 1:45. The link is in our virtual booth. Just want to put up there in case I forget to. Okay, so on the screen here, you should be able to see our portal. Our portal is sort of a one-stop shop for everything Stardog, whether that's you're looking for tutorials, links to our documentation, or these knowledge kits, as well as the access to our UIs. So I'm starting our knowledge kits today. This list is ever growing. You can see here the different options, but I'm going to start with the flight planning knowledge kit. And I'm just going to pick an environment and a database, which I've already created. But if you didn't have a database, you could create one there. And then I'm just going to install with the last click. And while that's installing, I'm just going to give you a little preview. As I mentioned in our knowledge kits, we have sample data models, sample data, a little preview of what you might expect in the graph, as well as some sample queries. And as always, reference to the data sets for this use case. So just waiting for this to finish installing. And there we go. I will now move into my environment, and this is where I get access to all of my different UIs. So I'm going to start with Stardog Explorer, which is our graph search and visualization tool. It's going to prompt me to pick a database, which is what I just loaded the data to. So from here, you can quickly visualize the model. This should look very similar to what was on the screenshot of the knowledge kit. I can come back to the main screen, and we have an input form here where I can begin searching. So I lived in Nashville for a period of my life. So I'm just going to search for Nashville. And what we'll see here is we get a result. And these are all different airports or aerodromes, which could be a heliport that exist in Nashville. We see the main airport here, along with some other things. We could view this data visually. So we have different airports, and you can start to see how a basic graph might begin to form. We also have our Stardog Advanced Query Builder. So maybe we want to find all airports that are located in a certain region. Maybe that region is equal to Tennessee. I can do a quick search of this. And what we'll see here is we have a limit here, but the first 100, all of these airports exist within Tennessee. We could, filter that down to say, give me all airports that contain the word Nashville. It should leave me with, I think, one or two. Yeah, two different ones. So we have a heliport along with Nashville International Airport. So, with Advanced Query Builder, I could continue building out this query to get things more, a more advanced query. But for today's demo, I'm just going to stop here and I'm going to pull out Nashville Airport. And I'm going to right click and get see details. And this is our details panel that gives us more information about this particular airport. So we have things like the elevation, the identifier, latitude, longitude. And this kind of gives it a nice, clean table view. But I want to view Nashville and all of its related entities from the graph perspective. And so I right clicked, and now you can begin to see how data is really stored and related in Stardog. We have Nashville International Airport at the center here. We have things like the runways. We have it's located in Tennessee, which is a part of the United States. We have things like weather. We have these preferred routes, which are sort of like highways of the sky. So when flying between two commercial airports, it's typically the route that an airliner will follow. So I could pull one of these out and say, for this route, what's the destination? So this is between Nashville and John F. Kennedy Airport in New York. So I'll just zoom in so everyone can see. And I could double click here, and then I'll get all the relationships for JFK as well. Radio frequencies, runways at JFK, etc. But you can imagine how I could begin exploring, the graph more. I'm just going to reset this so I get it from the point of view of Nashville. So I have, information around flight planning here, but the thing about knowledge graphs and what I talked about is they're set up for evolution. So now I want to move past just flight planning data, and maybe I want to add more operational type data in. So I'm going to actually hop over to Databricks, where I have a flight planning data set for flights. You can see the flight date, the airline, tail number, etc. And I want to onboard this data set from Databricks. So what I can do is leverage Databricks Partner Connect. And as I scroll through, you can see the different options. But at the bottom, we have Stardog. And with a couple clicks of the button, I can add this particular source into Stardog. Give me 1 second. And so this takes me back into Stardog in our Databricks Partner Connect page, where I want to create a new data source inside of Stardog. And I'm going to pick my environment, and then we'll call this flight demo, and I'll create this data source. Now, this data source has been created inside of the Stardog environment. And the next thing to do will be to onboard this data source and map it to a new class in Stardog. So to do that, I'm going to come back over here and launch Stardog Designer. Again, this Stardog Designer is our visual modeling and mapping tool. And I will create a new project. We'll call this DFC demo. And the first thing I'm going to do is onboard the data model from my existing environment. This is the model that was deployed with the knowledge kit. And you should see some of the familiar classes that we were looking at uh, in, you know, in the previous Stardog Explorer screen. So what you don't see here is a class for flights. So this is something that we need to onboard, but I can also do some other things first, like update the, the namespaces and things like that to, match my existing data set if I need to, or if I just want to change it. And then I'm going to onboard a new class. We'll call it flights. And from here, I can also add attributes. So we have flight number, departure date, and we're just going to leave everything as a string to be simple for today, but we support, all the different data types. We'll add scheduled departure time. Bear with me while I add these. Planned arrival time, operator, which will ultimately be the airline. And then we'll add two more. We'll add aircraft tail number, which is basically like a license plate for aircraft. Then the last one, the aircraft type. This is the actual type of the aircraft that's flying, whether that's a Boeing or Airbus or something like that. So I'll add that and I'll create that here, and you'll see a new class gets dropped into the canvas. Now I want to link this to the model. So I'm going to create a new relationship called departs from, and we'll link that to the aerodrome class. And so now in our knowledge graph, we've created a new class, and we've linked that class to our existing model. Now from here is where we can begin to onboard the table from the data source that we just created in the Partner Connect. So to do that, I'm going to add a new project resource. Going to go to proceed. You can see here I already have some different sources available to me, but the Databricks source is one that I just added. You can see here the flight demo data sources available to me. You can see I have like a history table, or actually I probably want my flights table, which is the current data. I'm just going to call this resource flights, and it's going to drop this resource into the canvas here. And then the next step is to map that. So I'll just call this map flights, and I will drag this to the flights class, and then I have my mapping selected. Within the graph, I want to select a label. This is what will be displayed when you're searching and exploring in Stardog Explorer, and we'll give it a primary identifier. We'll call it flight ID. Now for the rest of these, we'll use Stardog suggest mapping feature, which will give recommendations as to what columns in the source should be mapped to the attributes we've defined on this flights class. And you can see here, it gives us some high, medium, and then just some non-recommendations. I can accept all of these, with a medium degree of confidence. It's saying flight date is departure date. And then we'll accept all these, and then we will manually map these. Now, the last step here is to map the flights to how it would be linked to the aerodrome. So just with one more mapping, we're going to map this to the departs from. It should snap into place. Come here to the mapping. It's already pre-filled the flight ID, meaning that's the unique identifier on the flight side. And we're looking to, to add what the departure airport was. So we'll add origin airport here. So from here, this is a simple onboarding of one table and mapped to one class. If you're satisfied with this mapping, what you can do is now publish this. So there's actually two options. You could export all the artifacts. So those artifacts would be like the data model and all of the files required to do these mappings like programmatically from our APIs or command line, or you can publish directly to Stardog server. And I'll just select our database again. Go to next. And we're going to replace the existing model because we made some changes, or I guess some additions. And then we are going to create a new virtual graph. We're going to give it a name. We'll call it Flight Demo VG, so it's more recognizable for us. And from here, I'm going to publish this to the graph. Should take a moment, and it has now been published to to the server. I can come back and now refresh this point of view of Stardog, or of Nashville Airport and Stardog Explorer. You're actually going to expect to see the same result as before because I need to tell it to look at the name graph, or the virtual graph, as well as the data that's stored in Stardog. And I save this, and it's going to refresh the graph. Give it a second. But what should happen here is it should go out and yeah, there we go. So you can see all of the existing relationships before, the runways, the radio frequencies. But now we've onboarded 7 flights that departed from Nashville. And I can click on one of these. So we'll pull out American Airlines 1307. I right click on this. I say see details. And you can see here the scheduled departure time was 17:20. Well, we can come back into Databricks and we will update that departure time to 1900 hours. Just run that query, and we can come back into Stardog Explorer and refresh this screen. And in real time, we see that this departure time was updated in Stardog Explorer. So that's a little bit about how, an integration with our Databricks works, how you can query and virtualize data and access it in real time. We talked a little bit about the modeling and onboarding of those data sources, and then how you can map them in. And then, so for the last piece of this demo, I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can access this data from a Tableau dashboard or a Databricks notebook using Python. So I've already built a simple Tableau dashboard that consumes all of this data. But when I come over here to the data source, it's actually going to refresh everything. And yeah, so now we see the flight class here. And just once it gets refreshed, I can drag the flight class in. This just takes a second to kind of load up everything in Tableau. But the main idea here is that flight class and the data via Databricks is now available, within our Tableau dashboard. So I just need to tell it. I may have to move past this. Try bringing it one more time. All right. Well, I can kind of come back to this to see if this loads up. The second way to access this data, or another way, is to use Stardog's Python package. So I'm using a Databricks notebook here. You could obviously use a Jupyter notebook, or you could access this data in any other way. And I'm just using a simple query here to pull back weather data for 2 airports from the graph within this notebook. You can imagine using Python or PyStardog to run customized queries, port those out to a data frame using PySpark or some other machine learning capability to run against that data. You can then capture the output of those algorithms and feed that back into the graph. So your predictions, all of the output of those algorithms become queryable inside Stardog. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on with the Tableau dashboard, but the idea here was that uh, you would be able to onboard this new flight data. You would be able to see in real time the data that I updated, in Databricks via Stardog. I think with that, I will conclude. Are there any questions? Let me come back to the chat. I can't tell if I see some questions, so give me 1 second. So there's a first question about how to generate the certificate for this workshop. I don't know. Maybe one of the administrators can help with that. The link to the starter kits, I think Joe just created or dropped a link into the chat. But basically, if you want to get started using the cloud portal, you can go to, I think, cloud.stardog.com. You can create an account, and from there, you can get access to a free instance of Stardog, our starter kits, tutorials, anything like that. What is semantic data? Well, hopefully, I'm not sure when that question was asked. I like to think of semantic data as data infused with meaning. So with raw data in a database, or Stardog, we put a semantic layer kind of across that, so that semantic layer becomes abstracted away from the physical data layer. An example might be what someone calls a person within the organization. It could be an employee from the finance perspective, but maybe from the manufacturing side, they call it an associate. So the underlying physical data is the same. Tim Sedlak is Tim Sedlak, but depending on who you're talking with in the organization, one might refer to me as an associate, the other might refer to me as an employee. And so by building that semantic layer, or layers in this case, you infuse additional meaning into your data that you can then leverage for your insights downstream. And the last question here is, how long will the replay be available? I'm not sure if someone from the DSC team can answer that. Similar demos to this are available on our website as well. So that's another option as well. And if there were questions in the chat that I missed, I apologize. I'm scrolling up, but any other questions, feedback from the chat, please find me on LinkedIn. Let me see if I can grab my LinkedIn handle, put that in the chat. Otherwise, I think we can wrap early. So I just dropped my LinkedIn in the chat. But yeah, I think if there aren't any other questions, a question came in. Give me 1 second. So what is Stardog trying to solve for businesses? Well, there's a lot of different applications of the platform, whether that's accelerating analytics, modernizing your data lake. So in the current data lake space, I talked about Databricks here, but it could be a Snowflake or any other platform. Often that data is raw. It's kind of unstructured, or it's rigid in the sense that it's in a relational table. Stardog sits across these and provides that kind of semantic layer. So when I ask a question of the graph here, I'm saying, give me all the flights that left Nashville Airport, instead of saying, I need to query these 10 tables and join across them, to get my answer. For a non-data modeler or non-data engineer who's not familiar with the database or how those tables are related, I can intuitively use the platform and the graph to ask questions. So you empower more users than just your SQL data analysts, your hardcore data scientists. You're empowering more people in the organization to take advantage of the graph. And with all the plugins and integrations that we have, you can take advantage of the data in the graph to build custom applications, to connect using Python, connect and using Tableau or Power BI or other BI tools. So in my mind, there are a lot of different options how you can take advantage of the graph. And appreciate the kind feedback in the chat. Like I said, I dropped my LinkedIn into the chat. So if there are any other questions, please connect with me and I'd be happy to answer them. And thanks for reposting. I can hang out for a few minutes as well if the questions come up. So to my from the data science DSC team, do you want me to hang around or?
Hey Tim, you've got questions. Are you taking questions?
I addressed all the questions in the chat box, I think. If there's some that were in the chat, the actual chat that I missed, please pass them along to me.
Great. So I'm going to read the two I think that we haven't already answered in the chat. And there's one that says, what is Stardog trying to solve for in businesses?
Yeah, I think I just tried to answer that one.
Sorry.
I will. No, it's okay. I will just recap what I said. I mean, there's a lot of different use cases, right? But the goal of knowledge graphs and Stardog in particular is to help organizations infuse context or meaning into their data and providing the technical means to do that. So that includes our virtualization capabilities, our ability to ingest data into the graph, our inferencing. All of those tools are in the tool chest to build a knowledge graph that sits across all of your different data silos, opens up access to that data, and really hopefully drives more efficiencies within the organization, as well as generating new insights and discoveries in the data.
Great. Thank you so much. And apologies for asking you to repeat that. I just wanted to make sure we grabbed that last one.
A lot going on today.
Absolutely. So folks, if you have some more follow-up questions, you'll be able to see in the chat that there's going to be a live meet and greet and virtual booth at 1:45 p.m. So they'll be happy to answer more of your questions there. Tim? Oh, here's another question for you.
Can we use this graph data in a graph neural network? I think the answer is yes. Depends on what your application of that is. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn or follow up on that, I think the answer is yes. Without really knowing more with what you're trying to do.
Great. So folks who are looking forward to replaying this session, you'll be able to do so by coming back to this site after we finish the broadcast, and the replay will be available. You'll also be able to find a copy of this at the Data Science Connect YouTube channel when we post it. And please look out for some follow-ups from Stardog. I'm sure they'll also be able to share part of this content as well. All set, Tim?
I'm good if you're good.
Thank you so much for being here. And we'll see you next time. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.